Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to be going over t-shirt design. Now, I'll be using my own photographs and also my own artwork to create these designs. We're going to also be using the help of a clipping mask and a layer mask to get our end result. Now, these images are going to be distorted quite a bit, so don't let your equipment discourage you, since the watercolors are going to work around the image quite a bit. The quality of the image is not going to be as technical as if you would just print the image as it was just for image. Now, full disclaimer, I have my monitors and everything are calibrated, but what I will do is I open up an account with Spring, and what I want to do for the first time is I will still request a practice t-shirt just to see how they print it compared to what I see on my monitor. That's just because a new company, I want to see what equipment they use, their workflow, everything, how it compares to what I see on my monitor. Now again, I'm working from a Wacom 4K Pro, and that really tells me what my design will look like. I really like that monitor. But now this one behind me is the traditional watercolor I'm still working on. I have several demos ready to go pretty soon. They will be released shortly. But right now we're going to work on t-shirt design and how we could do this. Because again, remember, we're going to be working with traditional transparent watercolors in a way that what I mean by that is I have to watch and see if the shirt colors come through our design. And then if they do, what can we do about that so it doesn't look confusing or destroy the effect of our design? Let's take a look and see how we're going to do all this. Okay, let's start off in Affinity Photo 2. And just to show you a couple of quick things here, I'm going to go up to File, New. That's right here. File, New. And then hit New, and then up comes my presets right here. And what I will do then is show you two different ways that I can make a preset template, so to speak, for my t-shirt. Now my t-shirt designs are all going to be 9x12. Now the t-shirt 9x12 mask I have is just a straight 9x12. That is the one I would use to create any new mask I want, and then use it for just a mask only. Now the t-shirt 9x12, that is with margins. So my actual size is 2850 by 3750. And what I did was added an extra 150 pixels to both top and bottom, left and right. So then I could go to my margins and I have a 75 pixel border around the entire piece. That way, if I want to use a stroke around the entire picture, just get involved with some kind of a border, anything I want, I just want to be able to see the edges of my design and not let them go to the very edge of the image itself. This way I could save it as a PNG, but then I will see what my design will be. Now right now we're just going to make a quick mask, so I will click on that, hit create, and there's my just exact 9x12. Now for example, if I wanted just slight rounded corners on any of my images, what I would do is go to right here, hit the rounded rectangle, and I want black for this. And if I start up here in the upper left hand corner, I could then drag it down and take it all the way down till my lines turn red and green right there. And that's the full image, and that's it. Now what I could do here is if I grab this dot right here, I could change it to any amount of rounded corner I want. So if I leave it right there, that's 20. That would be perfect, actually. I was lucky there. But 20%, I have a 10, 20, and 30% saved as an already used mask. So then now all I would have to do is hit enter, and that's it. And then that way I will leave it as is. And then what I could do is just export that, hit file, and then hit export. I can't save as is in Affinity. It'll just save it as an Affinity file, and that's it. So with Affinity, I have to export it. And then once I have that up okay, it's going to be a PNG. 2700 by 3600, and then it's 300 DPI. I'm going to make everything 300 DPI. That's the only DPI I'm going to work at. Now, if I hit export, then just to show you right here, this is where it would go in just my masks. Here is my 10, 20, and 30, and we just made another 20. But then I even have a couple of oil 1, oil 2, and then just this straight rectangle is just nothing but a pure rectangle, but I could import that anytime I want and then manipulate that black. Now, we'll get into that a little bit later. But this is just a rough idea how I can make reliable masks in Affinity. But what we need to do next is take a look at some of our photographs and how we're going to prepare them for our t-shirt designs. Let's do that next. Okay, let's take a look and see what we have as our first example. Now, what this one is here is a 13 by 19. I'm using a Canon camera that generates a 13 by 19 at 300 DPI. Now, that's worth noting because then what I could do is drop the 13 down to 12 and then crop a vertical image out of any one of my horizontal images. I need to be working with a 9 by 12 as my end result image. So with this being a 13 by 19, I dropped the height of it down to 12. And then what I seen right away with this one in particular is I really liked the just the reflections of the cattails. It's somewhat graphic looking and just very basic, simple, but effective. And then if I took the goose over here and just cut out just the goose, then I can actually move it over to here and then still have my vertical format. So what I did was do that exactly, and here's my finished piece. Now this is also the actual PSD that I used for the actual cutout, and what I always do for myself is put a red layer behind it because I still choose to cut out a lot of my objects by hand. I know what I want to cut out. I know what kind of edge I want. I would prefer to do it myself artistically. So now this is what the goose looks like cut out, and because it was a little wee bit sharper than the rest of the water, I put a gauze and blur over the entire goose and reflection itself just to better match it with the new location it's going to be in. So now that the goose is there, then what I will do is leave this as just a preliminary image to start with for taking into Rebelle, and then maybe even doing a few other stages of creativity with it. But now I'll put a link up right now because we're going to be doing some photo retouching, photo manipulation, and I have a few other tutorials about that go much more in depth if you need some background information on that. But this is just going to be a run through of several photos that we're going to use as a design in our final stages. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, here's our next image. This one is a little bit on the artsy side also, and what this one is right here is the actual water line. So from here up is the actual boulders, and then from here down is nothing but reflection. But now what I want to do is I would really like to make a vertical out of this reflected yellow tree. It's giving me a real artsy impression there. So what I have to do first is for my images, go up to Document, Resize Document, and then now you can see it's roughly 3840 high. So what I will do is change that to 3600 and then hit Resize, and it is. But then now what I could do is then go to my crop tool, and what I could do is hit the unconstrained, but what I want to do is then hit 2700, and then now this is the area I'm going to be working with. It's just as high as it needs to be, but I could slide it back and forth left or right to anywhere I want to crop. So what I'm going to do is just slide it way over to the left, and we're going to put that tree in the lower right hand corner, And I would say about right there. We could cut a little wee bit off the left-hand side. And this way, I want to kind of eliminate these trees right in here, which would be right in here, just to keep this tree by itself alone. And if I double click, then this is the crop I would have. And then now if I double check it, my document size, resize my document, it should be 2700 by 3600, and that's the exact size I want. So now this one, I would have to export as is. We'll go down to export, and then that's ready to go. I want 100% quality. Everything's ready to go, and then I will just go back up here. Here is the image right here, and I will just put it in as cropped, and then hit enter, and that's it. And now that one's saved. Now I could close this one out, and let's go on to another one. Okay, let's move on to our next one. And this one's a little bit different. What I mean by that, this is a vertical, but what we have to do is, I already made it 2700 wide. Now that's the 2700 wide because that's the width it has to be. So in other words, I'm looking for my 2700 by 3600, but because a 35 millimeter image is a 2:3 format, I'm working with a 3:4 format. So I'm going to have to cut a little bit off the top and bottom, because it's 4,059 pixels high, but we only want 3,600. So with that in mind, what I will do then is, being that I already made it 2,700 wide, that's my 9 inches wide, I have to then go to my crop tool, and I could do this one of two different ways. I could either just enter 3,600 up here, or because I'm working with a 3:4 format, I could go down to custom ratio, and then put in 3, and then put in 4 here, and then that's my 3:4 format, and then this is the size I would be working with. This is how much I would be cutting off for the top and bottom where it's at right now. Now that's actually not too bad where it's at. I might slide it up a little bit because I think I could lose some of this black bottom here that's not adding up to too much. So what I would do is just slide it up a little wee bit more, and that looks good right about there, because then that'll include our sun a little bit more. I'd say about right there. Just double click that, and now this is our new image. This would be the 9x12 we need to work with, that will drop right into any of our templates and work also with our pre-made masks. Let's go ahead and export this one, and then we will hit everything is already preset here. There's our 2700 by 3600, and then export it, and then I will just put it back where it was, but then I'll just put cropped this time, and that's it, and that one's done. Let's go on to one more just to show you some retouch, and again I will include the retouch banner of other photographs we've worked on in the past with other tutorials that go into much more detail. Okay, let's take a look at our last photo that we could do in real time. Now this one here is interesting. It has a graphic look to it also. This one is going to be cropped off right here, this little rock that's half underwater. But then the grass itself has a nice, real fine detail look to it. And then just with the touch of color of the backlit green grass adds an interesting note to it. But what I'd like to do with this one, it's already 3,600 pixels high, so that's my 12 inches. But what I'd like to do with this one is crop out my vertical cut and then retouch these real light sparkles out of it. They're a little bit too eye-grabbing for me, and just to tone them down, I'll just clone them over, and again I'll add a link of further photo retouching, much more in depth, that will help you if that's what you're looking to find more information on. Now first we'll go ahead and crop it, and this is a 3:4 crop, so that's what we want already from the last one. And I'm going to move it over, I'd say about right there. Again, I'll put the bird in the lower third, rule of thirds, lower right. We'll keep that right there. And then now this is the image I would get, which looks pretty clean, pretty decent. But what I'll do now is retouch these out, and we'll do that next. Okay, now let's go ahead and retouch that out. And what I did was just grab my clone tool over here, and then I'm just going to grab a basic round soft edge brush because I want to be able to feather the pixels in to what's already there. And what we will also do is let's put it on a separate layer just so we could see a before and after. And then I'm also going to take the opacity down to at least 50 because I want to just do it a little bit at a time. And then I could make the brush a little bit smaller. That's good. And then now we'll take the cursor, put it right here is where we're going to get our pixels from. And we're going to start covering over them. And again, I'm just taking a little wee bit at a time to feather it right in. That's the end of that one. We can take the opacity up just a little bit. That's the end of that one. And then we'll do the rest speed. Okay, there we're done. Now that did make a big difference. Here it is without them, and then here it is with them. And I do like it without them better. It just keeps the attention to the bird instead of the sparkles. I would do something else there to make it a little bit more intentional than the sparkles themselves. But this would make an interesting design, in my opinion, also, just to have it as a watercolor wash. And again, this is just the early stages of the basic base image I'm going to be working with in Rebelle. So let's go ahead and save this one, and then we'll move on to what we're going to do with these. Okay, here we are in Rebelle. Now let's take a look and see. We'll open up. Let's open. We're going to open up our straight rectangle, and just to see what we could do with it to manipulate it to make it another unique mask. Let's go ahead and open it up. Now the first thing I want to do is show you just how we can manipulate this one. I'm going to go to my eraser tool, and I even have the splatter already picked. Now what I want to do is zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to nibble away with the eraser at the very edge of this, just to give it a unique edge. And I'll go ahead and do this speed painting. Once I finish the preliminary erasing, I want to enlarge the mask to make sure that I completely eliminate the straight black edge along the mask. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now what this would be is just a real fine ragged edge, just of a unique type of design. And again, it could just be one of many masks that I will keep. So I'm going to go ahead and export this one as a PNG. For this though, I have to turn my paper off first, and then now just go up here and save as a PNG. There it is right there. And I'll just call this one, okay, we got that one done. And now let's move on to another one. Okay, let's make one more real-time mask here, and what I want to do is make just one that could simulate watercolors. Now what I will do is I have the tilt the whole way down, straight down for the first layer, because I will use multiple layers in this if we need to, and we should. Now the visual settings right here, I have the absorbency cut down to just 2, the re-wet up a little bit to 7, texture influence I have it down a little bit because I'm not too concerned about that, because keep in mind this would be a PNG mask that will pick up the texture from our new painting wherever we import it to. And then the edge darkening, I want it up a little bit more just to create those hard natural watercolored edges. And the diffusion speed, I just have it at 5. Create drips is on, and then the drip size and drip length are both at 5. Okay, now with that in mind, what I am going to do is I have my bloom wet, I have black picked, and I'm going to bump up the size just a little bit, and the opacity is okay right where it's at. And I'm just going to start putting in some black here and there. Now, as long as I'm painting, it's not going to move or mix. But what I want to do is leave some dry spots, in other words, some unpainted spots, because I have 100 water in with my paint, which is as much water we can put in it. But you'll see what I'm doing here. And then what I'm going to do is just try and create some dry spots. So I'm just randomly painting, but I'm trying to keep some areas just all white. And I'm not going to take this all the way out to the edge, just to leave that natural watercolor vignette look too. And then we'll leave it work a while after I'm done with this first layer of paint. And let's see what happens. Put a little bit more here and there, and let's leave it work. Now, as always, this is what I'm going to be looking for. Where I left some dry paper. I did not want to wet my paper before I painted. And these hard edges are what I'm going to be looking for right here. All of these down here. Now, if I want to keep these, then this is where I'll keep this layer as is, dry it when I want to, and then put it aside and start working on another layer on top of it. Now, if I don't like this washboard effect, I could just move into a blend brush and just blend them out a little bit, and then leave the water carry it a little bit more before I start with a new layer. And this way it'll give a little bit more random, but you can see how it smears the paint a little bit, which actually would be correct with even traditional. But then what I'll do is I'll leave it blend for a while now, and that smear effect will go away. It'll start picking up the texture of the paper again, which is perfect. And then where the paint starts to build up down in here, right in here, that's where we may start to get a drip, like right up in here. And if they're small, we'll leave them go. We'll leave some tiny, and then these right here, where these pools of water are draining out, that looks really nice. But we'll leave that way it is. Okay, now we're going to stop this one where it's at. And then I'm going to add another layer. I fast dried that one. I'll add another layer, and then now I'm going to put some more black over top of this. Let's go up this time, but only not quite as much. That way we could get some other kind of mixing lines. And again, I don't have to worry about those lines that I wanted to keep, where the paint stopped at the dry paper. But what I'm going to try and do is mix it up a little bit so I get some more lines, but going the opposite direction, the different way. And I could have put the transparency lock on if I only wanted to work within that first area I painted, but I think we're safe here so far. Okay, let's let that work for a little bit. Now you can see right in here, I'm starting to get some edges. Right in here, I'm getting some edges now, some nice black edges going the opposite direction, which is looking pretty good. I have some drips going off. Now I could either erase those out or just leave them there, doesn't matter. But this is really starting to look watercolory now. And then what we'll do is we'll fast dry it right there. We'll fast dry right there. Now what I'm going to do is select these two, and then I'm going to duplicate them. And I'm going to then take this one, move it up to here. I'm going to take the original 1 and 2, put them in a group, turn them off, and then now I have 2 that I can work with, and I'll show you why. Because I want to keep my original layers. That's only if I want to keep on experimenting with them. If I'm happy where it's at, then it doesn't matter. I didn't need to copy them over. But what I'll do now is just import a practice image. I'll hit OK. I just went to File and Import right here, Image. And then once it comes in, it centers itself up really nice, which is perfect. But then keep in mind, these are our pre-made images at 9x12. Now, if I hit Clipping Mask, it's going to show me some black because the bottom layer it's only going to make the clipping mask to the layer number 2 right here. But now if I take these 2 layers and combine and merge them together, then this is what I would get for my watercolor effect. That doesn't look too bad at all already, but then this is just a mask that we could build on. Now keep in mind, I have my original layers down here in this group turned off, and all it would do is make them black. You can see what it's doing because it's not a part of the clipping mask. But then if I go to the clipping mask, just to show you that what I could do is if there's too much white in here, or if there's just some patterns that I'd rather break up. Now I have some really nice hard edges here and there that are working rather well with the grass and some things down here. But just say, for example, I wanted to add it. All I have to do is go back to my black paint right here, and I'll cut back the opacity, so I just take it up a little bit at a time, and then I'm on my mask layer right here. Now if I go back in and start painting black, then I'll take some of that white out, and I'll start filling in some of the areas so I could be selective if I want to, and just put a little bit of paint back in here and there, and it will still run and do everything like it was on the previous layers. But what I'll do, I'll just leave that go, and we'll see if that works a little bit and changes anything. But you can see how much it changed it. But with the magic of digital, if I undo that, it's going to undo the mixing. Fast draw it right there. I won't even give it a chance to mix. But then I did fill in some of my white areas that I wanted. Okay, now say we're happy with this mask the way it is. Now, number one, I would save this as a Rebelle file, which I did, because if I have some effects that I like, I may want to build off of them. I could go back to my group 1 layers, the original layers, and start duplicating them over, adjust each one of those, manipulate those so I could create another watercolor mask that would be different from my first one just by building off of what I already have made. With that in mind, if I want to keep this one as is, then all I have to do is turn off the photograph. There's my mask, but I don't want my paper involved. So I turn off the paper, go up here, hit File, Save As. I want a PNG, and there's all my other masks. Now if I just save it as watercolor mask, that I saved it as a Rebelle file, hit Save, and we're done. And now I could bring this particular mask up anytime I want to use as a clipping mask for any other photograph that I may want to use it on. Let's do one more real-time mask, but this time we're going to use a layer mask with it just to adjust our final result. Okay, we're going to do one more here, but this one is going to have a few more steps to it, and there's going to be a little bit more to it as our end result. Now what we're going to do first is we are going to import our mask. It doesn't really matter which one you import first, but we'll import our image. Well, we'll import our image. Let's work with this one right here. And that is a Kayaker, which should look pretty interesting in watercolor. Now I centered it, and now what I'm going to do is import my watercolor mask that we just made. Here's the clipping masks. Here it is right here. I'll import that. I'll hit OK. It's self-centered. That is great. But now what we need to do is take the mask and put it below the photograph. Now if I hit clipping mask, that is what I would get using this photo and the watercolor mask we just made. Now we could take this a good bit further. Now first what I want to do is I'm going to delete this layer just so it's not confusing. And then I'm going to duplicate these two. And there we go. And what I'll do is turn these two off. And then now this is what we would have to work with. Now what I'm going to do this time though is distort the image. And you'll see what I mean. I'll go to the top image and I'm going to use my water tool. And then just say, for example, the helmet, we'll take it to the upper right and blend it all around. And what I'm looking for is just randomization. If I put down some water, there's the water. It's already moving. I got to watch. All right, I'll stop it there. And then I'm going to take this part of the helmet out a little bit. And what I'm looking for is just expanded areas of paint. There goes there. Stop it there. I'm going to take the jacket out to the upper right. We'll get a drip here, I think. There it comes. Okay, that looks good. Now keep in mind, whatever I blend is still going to be based off of the clipping mask. If I merge those two, then these colors would go anywhere. But anything that's white that was because of the clipping mask, all these white areas, whatever blends on my photograph is still going to remain white because of the clipping mask. If you don't want that, if you want your colors to blend or bleed anywhere you want, then first merge those two layers, the clipping mask and the photo itself. Now, if I take this, let's see, the front of the kayak, I'm going to take it down to the lower left. That looks good. Now, see, it's taking the red over the water. That will move, but those white spots that are in there, that is still our clipping mask working. And now let's take it down. That looks good. Now, we're getting a lot of interesting watercolor patterns there. And what I want to do now is I fast dried that. I want to take this bottom water and take it down into new paper. But now what I want to do then is if I want to do that, then I do have to merge the photograph with the clipping mask. If I merge those two, now it will be able to go anywhere I want, and the color itself will go over those white areas if I wanted to. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's take this just about straight down. We put some water, there it is, over, and now it's going to take it into new white paper. We'll stop those drips right there. We'll take a little bit more water over here, take it down that way. Now everything's coming this way. Now those white areas that used to be there because of the clipping mask, they're now covered over. There's a couple drips that way. This jacket in the purple looks pretty good here. Now if I want to change some of this black, I'll go straight up. I'll do it much slower. And I'm going to put water right across this black just to diffuse it a little bit. And it'll take it straight up. But now it just has a soft bleed because I turned the tilt way down. That's looking interesting. Let's go to the side a little bit now. Okay, now that's an interesting watercolor effect. I'll fast dry that. This bottom hand and paddle, let's take it down to the lower right here. Take it up a little bit more. Okay, I'll fast dry that. And then let's do something a little bit more with this hand. Okay, fast dry that. Now you can see the hand is completely gone. Just the way it is right now. If you get it distorted and you think you could still make it out, or if you want more of an abstract final piece, then you could leave it right here. But if we want to clean it up a little bit, now what we're going to do is turn these two back on, and then I'm going to make this one a clipping mask. Now here's our original image back, and I'm going to merge these two so I don't have the black to work with. I'll merge those two down. But then what we're going to do is if I turn this one off, there's the image the way it was originally. But now if I turn it back on, there's our distorted image on top of the good image. So what I want to do is add a layer mask to this. And now if I start painting my black, but since this is a layer mask, I can easily reverse this. So whatever I change, it's not a permanent change. So just say, for example, if I go back to my watercolor brush, I'm going to use my bloom. And being that I'm working on the mask, I don't want no water. I'll turn the opacity up just a little bit. But say, for example, I want to bring his hand back a little bit. If I start masking this out, the top layer, then I'll be revealing the layer underneath it, which is the good hand exactly the way it was. So now I took that out. If I take it out too much, if I go back to white, go back over a little bit, I'll start to reveal the top layer again even more. So that depends on how distorted I want something. If I like this purple the way it is, or if I want to take a little bit of out, I go back to my black, and then I can lighten it up a little bit if I want to. Just leave a little bit, but then what I'll be doing is revealing his original shoulder from the bottom photo. By revealing this right here is what I'm doing by masking the top layer. Working on the mask only. If I want to clean up some of this and reveal some of the water where the edge of the water was a little bit more, I could do that. And then just leave some of these reds down in here. And then let's see, if I want to bring back the edge of the pad a little bit, just do that a little bit and that's it. But then there's a lot of color splashed around from the paddle, which is nice. That's just color unity. The hand I already brought back. Now if I want to bring back more of the helmet, I could just lightly dust black on the mask itself, and then I'm actually revealing the photograph underneath. If I want to bring back a little bit of the bill, there we go there, and a little bit of the face area, but it's covered up with the water, and that's what I wanted, so it's not a recognizable person. And then let's see, this hand looks okay, that looks okay. If I want to get rid of these drips, I can, or leave them there. It doesn't matter. If I take black over them, they're going to be gone. If I take white back over that, they're going to come back. That's as simple as that, working with a layer mask. Now the clipping mask, we combined all of them, and we got that watercolor edge from the very beginning. But then what I did now was just distort the photograph itself. Let's see, for example, if I want to take this down, if I'm taking the black and I want to take some of this area back to the original photo, right here, the original water splash, I can. But if I want those reds in it, then I could just take it back with the white and reveal the top photo instead of the bottom photo. And that would be it. I think I like that. And I would actually could call this one done just the way it is. So this would just give you an idea of how to use a clipping mask stacked on top of another layer with a clipping mask, but then using a layer mask to reveal the bottom photo once you distort the top photo. Let's go on to one more. Okay, let's try one more, but I want to show you this time a black and white photograph, just how much of a difference the clipping mask will make depending on what kind of photograph you use. Now let's go up and import. Let's start with, there's a clipping mask right there. We'll go ahead and import our clipping mask. That's okay. This is still the same 9.5 by 12.5 paper. So I'll have my 1/4 inch border. I'm going to delete this layer just so it's not. Okay, then now we will actually import our photograph, but this time we're going to do a black and white. Here's the photographs we're working from. This is going to be an interesting picture. It's going to have kind of like a charcoal watery color look, I think. Again, I'm going to make 2 backup copies. I'm going to take one of these down here, turn these 2 off. We'll make this one into a clipping mask. And that's what we get already. And then you could see what the clipping mask is doing to the tree and root area already, in the tree up in here, softening some of the areas. But what we'll do is distort it even a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is we'll start it in different directions. I think it started straight down. And I'll show you where I'm putting the water down. This is my splatter tool of the water, which is right here. That's the same one we've been using all along. And again, since I didn't merge it with the clipping mask, the water is only going to go where the clipping mask will let it. And I'll put this down, and then as soon as I lift up, it's going to start mixing. But we'll turn off our water. And then now we'll leave it go straight down for a little bit. This is changing up in here. Now let's take it out to the right a little bit. We can even add some more water. It's changing quite a bit up in here. I can put a little bit more water. That drained down nicely. But then let's distort this up a little bit more as it's going to the right. And again, remember, some of these areas might not change much because it's going to depend on the clipping mask of what will be seen and not seen. Some of these white areas in here will remain white because that's what the clipping mask is going to do. So this time, if I don't merge the two, I'll get a different effect because everything will be blending based on the clipping mask. If I take it up to the upper right now, do a little bit in here and there, and this right in here. But these black lines in here and this white spot right here, right there, is going to stay there because that's the way the clipping mask is. You can see the trees are starting to distort now. Let's take it to the right a little bit. Or I'm sorry, to the left. And let's do this a little bit down in here. And then again, some of this white may stay where it's at. Take it back to the right, and I'm going to destroy that side of the tree a little bit. These branches up in here, now you can see this is pretty well blended up in here. This is working together interestingly. And then we still have the white spot, but then again, we could go back in and change some of this. Now the roots are all gone. I'm going to fast dry it there. But then now again, the same thing. I will merge these two. And that's it. That's the whole entire painting. But then if I bring these two back and make this a clipping mask, then now that's the original photo right here. And then now here's our new mix. But then now again, the same thing. If I want to start bringing the old one back, all I have to do is apply a layer mask and start making our changes. So you could see that this is going to be twice as dark as it is originally. So then I can even adjust the opacity of this layer, whichever one I want to change, and make it as bold or as strong as I want. So if I want the watercolor effect to be stronger, then I could change that. Now right now it's a little bit softer and everything is kind of soft. I go down to here, we'll keep that one at 100 for now. But then we're going to go to the mask itself. And then we're going to just maybe clean up the root area just a little bit. I'll go to my black watercolor, and then we're going to use the Bloom Wet real light, and I'm going to make it smaller. And if we start painting black over this, I'm going to start bringing back the root area and a little bit more detail, like these trees in here. Then I'll start revealing the trees and branches behind them. Make it a little bit more opaque. And then if I want to bring back the edge of the tree, that's it right there. And these branches, I could add a little bit of detail to them just like that. And all I'm doing is dusting black on the layer mask. Those separation of those two trees there. This down in here, just a little wee bit more detail. And like down in here, if I could bring some of this back. But again, since we're working with a layer mask, this is nothing permanent. We could go back over with white. This rock, it looks pretty good the way it is, actually. I kind of lost a little bit too much. I'll take white back over that, and then I'll just soften it up. That tree, and it'll look a little bit more diffused and loose. And then this area down in here is a big black splotch. Let's see if we can take some of it out. There we go. Get a little bit of root action there. And take a little wee bit of the original tree back there. And this right here. We're just still working on the layer mask, not the clipping mask. And take this out just a little wee bit. And that's it. And then keep in mind, I could use any kind of textured brushes. Just say, for example, my pepper brush. Then if I start adding texture to it, then that's what I'll get. That's barely noticeable because there's a lot of texture in the leaves themselves. And I think I would call that one quit. I'd fast dry that just in case. And then just leave this one the way it is. And that one, you still see the sun. If I want to pronounce the sun rays a little bit more, go back to the maybe even the bloom, turn it up a little bit. And then if I want to pronounce the sun rays, there they are there. But the sun rays are taken out a little bit because of the clipping mask. So if I want to turn that one back on, just take a little bit of black. There we go. Now I'm using black on the layer mask, and I'm bringing back my sun rays of the original photo. And that's it. And then I would leave that one, I think, just the way it is. And that's an interesting effect of the original photograph. Let's do one last one speed, but we're going to add some text to it and give it more of a final piece. Okay, as soon as I imported the mask, I inverted it 180 degrees. That changed the look of that particular mask immediately. Now what I'm doing is just splashing water around on my top layer to distort it to give it that watercolor look. Now I'm working with a very transparent layer on the top, and it's losing the ability to cover the bottom layer. So to cover over some of that detail to preserve my watercolor look, I added a mask to the bottom layer and then went back in and masked off some of that bottom layer to allow that transparent top layer to show through. Let's see what we have. Okay, let's see what we got. Now what I did just to save time was I just took these two layers right here, this one and this one from the top, and then what I did was duplicate those over and then merge the layer masks to each one and then merge those two layers together and got the very top layer. So in other words, the top layer we're looking at now is literally everything we did up until this point in the speed painting. So just being able to work with one layer, again, we could adjust the opacity. If we think it's too dark because we combine two layers, then we could either adjust the opacity just with that one layer or adjust the layers before we merge them. Then this way we'll either have more detail or more watercolor effect. That's up to you. But now that I have this layer ready to work, it gave me, again, some very nice effects, just quickly looking around to some of the watercolor effects of the photograph itself and just keeping enough detail to make it look like something in particular. Then what I could do is work with this, but now because I am working with transparent watercolors, then I could see the paper through my design. But what that would mean though then is I would also be able to see the color of the t-shirt through my design. So if I start putting on some of these colors, if it was a gold shirt, this is just quinacridone gold, just say if these colors represent colors of t-shirts, then I'm going to start seeing the t-shirt splash through my design. And I may not want that. Now, if it adds to the painting itself and it brings on a color unity effect, then that's okay. But once I start getting into different colors, then it might start getting a little bit too distracting rather than adding to the design itself. Potter's pink is not too bad. It's a kind of a subtle color, but if I start going into blues or cooler colors, then it is really going to change the effect of my watercolor wash. Now, there is a couple of things we could do with that. And if I actually leave it on blue, then what I did was the clipping mask we used at the start, just a rounded clipping mask we made in Affinity Photo, I made the exact same thing out of white, and then here's what I got. So now if I would use a background like this, then I could put this transparent watercolor on any type of colored t-shirt. It wouldn't matter because I have a nice white background that would be the set design. Now up in here, if I have some of the design going out of that rounded rectangular area, I could just select the white, invert that selection, and then erase anything outside of my white rounded rectangle. Okay, now if I want to get a little bit more fancy, then I will turn this off And if I go to the layer I'm still on, which is the design itself, it has a very ragged watercolor edge. If I use my magic wand over here, I only have the tolerance set at 5, which is very, very low, only because I have some very super transparent washes involved in the very edge. So if I want to pick up everything, what I would do is click on the transparent part where I have no color or paint at all. Click on that, and then I'm going to pick the background and not the design itself. And then what I would do is just invert that selection, and now I only have the selected watercolor area. So this way, it will actually give me a very good place that if I would fill this with white, which is what I did right here, now this is the exact design itself with just a white background. So if I wanted a ragged white edge and then just leave the watercolor be the edge of the design, I could do that. Or I could put it in a framed rounded white rectangle and do that. But at least I could use it under any kind of color of t-shirt. This way it wouldn't matter what color t-shirts I would pick to be a part of my design. But now with that in mind, I think I have to think about this for myself, and what I might do is actually just use these types of designs just on a white t-shirt only, and that would really be a clean look for this particular type of watercolor design. But I'll figure that out for myself. Now as for you, you could obviously use this for t-shirts, but then keep in mind this is kind of just an elaboration of the 10-minute watercolor, and it would also give it, and I'll put that link up now, by the way, but it'll also give you the opportunity to just create designs out of your photographs. Because keep in mind, since we're distorting the photograph, then the quality of the image is not that critical if you want to artificially enlarge it. In other words, even if you take cell phone photos, that would be no problem at all, because you're going to distort the image anyway. And then for that reason, the quality of the image is not that critical. Now, with this in mind, I hope this gave you some ideas of just how to create some watercolor designs out of your photographs. And what we will do next, though, is we're going to take this back into Affinity 2 and add some text to it, just to show you how we could work with layer modes and blending modes of the text to just give us variations that will be non-destructive also, that we could easily change it if we want to. Let's do that as our final step. Okay, let's just save this as a PSD. We're going to save all our layers just in case we want to use the t-shirt colors as an example of what it would do to our text. So I will just go up here, save as, and I want to just save it as a PSD, and that would be right here. But I am going to go up and let's see, we'll just put it right here in the t-shirt images and save it, and that's it. It'll be easy to find. Let's take it into Affinity Photo 2. Okay, we have it now in Affinity Photo 2, but then just FYI, the masks from Rebelle 6 did not come over into Affinity. So I just have 3 layers there that are all without a mask, just so you know. But what I'll do is I'm still working on this layer itself, so that's all I need. And then what I can do also is I will turn that one off. These are our white layers that we were working with. Here's the rounded rectangle. If I put a color to it, then there it is there. That is the same. And then here is our ragged edge white, which would be the same also. And then this could stay the same. But now what we will do is we will put a little bit of text to this and then experiment with the blending modes of the text. Now there are many different ways we can put text, but what I'm going to do is just put a very subtle text over the image and then leave it blend over the image itself, so it's kind of there but very subtle. let's do that now. Okay, let's go to our creative text tool. Right here, the artistic text tool is exactly what we want. I'm going to go up to about 96. And then I'm going to try, let's see, let's go down to Franklin Gothic. And I'm going to use this one right here. Now let's try the heavy. And then if I put this here, I'm going to put fall color. Just something as simple as that. I'm going to move it around a little bit. And what I'll do is move it down. But then now that I have the select tool, I could then just center it right up here, left to right, and there it is. Now it's nice and centered. But then now if I take this, because it's black, depending on what color I use, is going to change this. But now if I even just use a different blend mode, let's try, I think there's overlay, and then I think soft light would be interesting. Yeah, there it is there. Now that's soft light. What I'm able to do is see the image itself, the design itself, but then it's still just a variation of the text over that, so I could kind of see both at the same time. And that is what the interesting effect I would be looking for. So this would be the way it would be now. And then again, if I want to zoom in on this a little bit, then I can even, again, change the layer opacity and make it real subtle so you can barely see it, or just all the way up to 100%. And then, of course, if I go back to my text tool and select this and then change colors, then it's going to change. So now if this is gold, then I can barely see it. I don't know if I'd want that. Let's try deep blue. It's going to make it look purple because of my blending mode. And let's try white just for trying it. That's an interesting effect. That's not bad there. So I could either use white or black. Let's see what it looks like. I think I kind of like black a little bit better. It kind of looks washed out. We'll use black. And then that would be it. I think I like that better. And then plus I have my white background behind it too. I think that's what's preventing the blue from coming through. If I turn the white off, then now it's going to change, and I do get a splash of blue in the text area. So I think depending on what I would like, whether it be this background or this background, would be one of the two. But then depending on the shirt, if I just go back to just a white shirt, then that may also be an option of just leaving it just like this. And for me, I think just a basic, simple design like this, I think I'd like this the best, because then this way I could carry my splashes and everything else way up into the area of the shirt and make it a little bit more splashy and abstracty, so to speak. And this way I won't be confined to a specific outlined area. But as for you and your shirts and your designs, or even if you want to use it for something else again, that will be entirely up to you. I'm just trying to show you some ideas of what to do with some images in Rebelle, and then sometimes with a little bit of help from Affinity Photo 2. And between the both of them, you can make any type of design your heart desires. So with that in mind, until I see you out in the field or back at the studio, thanks for watching.